everyone, welcome to the second episode of my Japanese film series. Today I thought I would talk to you about Akira Kurosawa's 1945 film, Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail. Kurosawa actually didn't really want to make Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail. He was more interested in making a war epic about Oda Nobunaga, which later he actually did get an opportunity to make. Many of you might know it as Kagemusha. However, in 1945, the Japanese government had requisitioned all of the horses in Japan, and so Akira Kurosawa didn't have any horses to film a samurai epic. So instead, he made this fairly low-budget film about Yoshitsune and his loyal warrior monk follower, Benkei. Now, Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail is based off a kabuki play called Kajin-sho. And Kajin-sho is actually based off a no play called Akata. Akata is based off the historical incident from the 13th century where Yoshitsune, one of the most famous samurai in all of Japan, is fleeing from his brother Yoritomo, who had just established the Kamakura shogunate. Yoritomo had set up checkpoints all across Japan, and the samurai running these checkpoints were looking for Yoshitsune and had been alerted that he might be traveling disguised as a monk. Benkei and Yoshitsune and a few of their other followers enter a mountain checkpoint led by Magistrate Togashi, or headed by Magistrate Togashi, and say that they are monks going on a pilgrimage and collecting donations to repair a shrine. Of course, Togashi asks, well, if you're really monks collecting donations, where's your subscription list, or Kajin-sho, which is where the incident gets its name. Obviously, they did not have a subscription list, but Benkei pulls out a blank scroll and reads from it, tricking Togashi into thinking that they actually are monks. Togashi says, alright, you can leave, and they're about to exit when one of his men sees Yoshitsune, disguised as a porter, and stops them. At this moment, Benkei resorts to beating Yoshitsune for causing trouble. Because this is a really big no-no in the samurai or in the lord-vassal relationship, it's a very famous scene, and Togashi lets them pass. Now, it's left ambiguous if Togashi does this because he's actually tricked, or if Togashi does this because he's so moved by Benkei's loyalty that he allows them to pass anyway. Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail has some really good performances. Of course, you have Denjiro Okochi as Benkei. However, the two real stars of this film are Suzumu Fujita as Magistrate Togashi and Kenichi Enomoto as the additional porter. Now, this porter character actually doesn't exist in any of the previous renditions of this event. Akira Kurosawa added him. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to surprise a lot of you. Akira Kurosawa was heavily influenced by Western theater, right? Literature and cinema. Obviously, this is a surprise to no one. He was especially influenced or inspired by Shakespeare. As you all know, some of his most famous works are adaptations of Shakespeare's plays. For example, King Lear was remade into Don, and Macbeth was remade into Throne of Blood. So, he added Enomoto, who was a comedian in Japan, to give a very Western-style comedic relief to the film. And it definitely succeeded. Enomoto has great facial expressions, great body language, and a lot of ways he really steals the show. And there are some interesting interpretations out there about what Enomoto's character really means, what the porter represents between like the common man and the samurai. Donald Ritchie talks a little bit about this. I'm not really going to touch on it very much. You can read those other things that are out there. What I do want to talk about is Suzumu Fujita's role of Togashi. Now, Togashi is traditionally depicted as sort of an older man, bumbling. No one's really sure how much of an idiot he really is. However, Suzumu Fujita is kind of younger and handsome, and he really plays Togashi as very sly and clever, which puts a whole new dimension to whether or not Togashi was tricked by Benkei or he let them pass because he was so moved by Benkei's display of loyalty. Just as an example, I think that you guys should compare Suzumu Fujita's Togashi with a more recent depiction of Togashi. This one is found in the 2005 taiga drama TV series Yoshitsune. Now, I know some people find Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail a little difficult to watch, and this is because it has sort of musical quality to it. Akira Kurosawa decided to use a lot of the music from the kabuki play and the no play, so it's very old-fashioned, and music is actually used as a form of narrative in this film. So it kind of makes it seem a little dated, and if you don't know where Kurosawa is coming from, it definitely seems weird. But just keep in mind that the music is actually from the kabuki play and the no play, which is why it's there. Now, I mentioned before that this was made in 1945, and it was intended as a sort of propaganda piece, which makes sense because it shows a very idealized depiction of the lord-vassal relationship between Yoshitsune and Benkei. However, Kurosawa actually received a lot of criticism because the Imperial Japanese government thought his adaptation of the story was too democratic. Obviously, the inclusion of the porter was very Western and sort of had some underlying things to say about commoners versus samurai, and also Benkei's exchange with some of the samurai about what honor and loyalty really meant could be interpreted as democratic. Interestingly enough, however, after Japan was defeated and surrendered and occupied by American forces, the American occupation actually banned Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail because they thought it glorified feudalism. So I think it's hilarious that this film was criticized by the imperial government as being too democratic, and also criticized by the American occupation for being too feudalistic and fascist. I don't know how it can be both, but apparently it is. So that is my review and analysis of Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail. This is a fairly difficult film to get your hands on, but it's definitely worth it. And I have once again included a link to a written review of the film in my blog, which can be found in the sidebar. I think I'm pointing in the right direction this time. So thank you very much for watching, and tune in for the next episode.